then we have sad news. We're going to pay tribute to B. Smith, who literally sat in this time slot, I believe, on these. Was she 6 to? What was she?
6 to 9.
6 to 9 on Urban View. Before I got here in 2013, she had a radio show. And she was declining in health then, and she and her husband Dan Gaspy were on these radio airwaves, and just to watch this woman, a great giant, deteriorate because her mind, her health, and her brain is. Alzheimer's is so evil.
It's a horrible disease.
Do you have any?
My mother passed away from it last year.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It is 2 times more likely to hit Black people,
Mm-hmm.
which is something we don't talk about in our community. So I'm going to spend some time this week, especially on Wellness Wednesday, talking about it. But when your mom was diagnosed
Mm-hmm.
with the disease, did you see signs way before then?
Yes. There
Okay.
were many, many signs. She kept repeating the same stories over and over again. She became less and less active, like wanting to leave the house. Having conversations with her sometimes became my mother had a rigorous mind. Like, she loved to read, she loved politics, she loved media, she loved to talk about race and gender and have arguments. Like, it's like her number one favorite thing to do was to argue. Like, she loved it. And so for her to go from having these vibrant, like, my mother would be on the phone for like 4 hours straight, vibrant conversations, to suddenly, she's rushing to get off the phone because she doesn't have really anything to say, and she's just repeating
Was there
herself.
recognition? Because I think that's the cruelest thing, when you recognize that you're what was once
Yes.
this.
I think she knew, but she was scared. It's a very terrifying illness. And then by the time, she was diagnosed, she was already on the downslope. Like, she was already, almost gone to us. Like, she'd started to forget her husband, my father. She eventually, forgot who me and my sisters were. And I think what was hardest for me to watch was for her mother, my grandmother, who's still with us, to watch her daughter forget her. Like, as a parent, you always imagine that you'll be the first to go before your child. My grandmother's in her 90s. And so to have her witness her daughter, her eldest child, who she loved so dearly, deteriorate was very hard.
As a family, because I know there are people listening who are, I know for a fact, that there are family members listening to us right now who are helping someone get through this, because there's no cure. Because that's the other thing. You watch someone like your mom or like a B. Smith build something that was amazing. This woman built an empire. Her parents, her father worked in a coal mine or in a mine. Her mother was a domestic worker. Yet she had a vision for her life that took her to Willamette. Took her to the pages of
I used to go to her restaurant all the time in D.C.
And that was in Union
Yes,
Station.
Union Station.
She had one in Broadway. I mean, a Black woman with a restaurant in Union Square in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
A Black woman with a restaurant on right around the corner here on Broadway. A Black woman that had a television empire. She also had wares. You could buy her wares in what was it, Bed Bath & Beyond? Mm-hmm. She had a whole line of sheets and things. Like, they called it a Black Martha Stewart, but I don't even want to do that, because to me, there doesn't need to be that comparison.
She was B. Smith.
Thank you. And we talked about it last year, because I was really mad at her husband for moving that woman into her house. Her house. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it was.
I had so many tough conversations with people about that.
Well, so you saw it differently than I? Because I was
furious.
I was furious. I didn't know B. Smith personally, but I know that the dynamic woman that I grew up watching and admiring and idolizing on some level, because who gets to do that, right?
Yeah. No, that was probably the toughest for me to watch. It was sad enough to see her restaurant close and her businesses fold because of her illness, which I didn't really understand why that was happening. I was just like, these are really viable businesses. Like, you could probably keep them running.
But it shows you how much she was probably involved, right?
Yeah.
It shows you how much weight she was taking.
Exactly.
That with her not being
Mm-hmm.
mentally present, that it all
fell
falls
apart.
Yeah.
And for him, like, I have all the empathy in the world for caregivers. My father was a primary caregiver for my mother, but where did you find time to meet somebody and date? Like, my dad, like, there's a book called The 36-Hour Day about caring for someone with Alzheimer's, because literally your day never ends. My father was exhausted. I didn't know how much more of it he could personally take being the primary caretaker of my mom. And he was very dedicated. He did get nurses, he did get help, but he was that person in the middle of the night, helping her when she was, when she was disoriented and didn't know what was going on. He was the one that was cleaning her up after she had accidents or problems. And so it's just like, you found time to find a girlfriend? Like, what is even happening? And then the other thing was like, I think it's important to shed a light on what it's like to live with someone with Alzheimer's and to be a caregiver, but I didn't see the purpose in being like, oh, by the way, this is my new girlfriend.
And we're gonna do a story, and we're gonna publicize it. I'm gonna post it on Facebook.
Yeah,
because nobody was asking for that anywhere. But for me, as a woman, as a single woman who was building a business, and if I had a husband, and God forbid, and I built this empire, you're living off of me, literally. Yes, you had a marketing career, but this empire, that's my genius. And to have somebody come in,
No, I can't even imagine it. But I mean, like my father is such a stand-up guy. Like him and my mom used to say the same thing about each other. Like, if this don't work out, we're not doing this again. It's like, this is it for us. This is our marriage. And it's like, I'm going to be married to you, and I'm only willing to do this with you because I love you so much and you're so special to me. And nobody else can match that. And so, like, on the one hand, like I tried really hard because I had this deep conversation with a writer who wrote about Alzheimer's, and she was much more open-minded about this than I was, because I just couldn't remove myself from it. All I kept thinking about was like my mom, and if my dad had moved on while my mom was still with us,
even
like, in the house,
right, in the house.
Like, I was just like, yeah, I get it that she technically isn't your wife anymore because she doesn't remember you, but I remember. And you remember,
right?
And so that was tough for me. Like,
yeah,
I'm
still
not
struggling.
That
I'm still struggling. I'm still struggling with it. And I just want to wish that her spirit is.
I hope she's at peace. Yes.
And unfortunately, I have not. My father died from cancer, so the last stages he lost his faculties, but. And it was interesting because one of the things we played games and very competitive. And the last card game we played, I'm like thinking that I'm helping him, like, because we played a dozen. So I'm, like, what's up, And then in that moment, I realized, wow, like, I don't think he's going to be here much longer because he would never let me talk to him like that. Mm-hmm. Get away with it, right? But to watch somebody that is brilliant just lose. And you said the decline was it swift, or was it?
It felt, because of the fact that for a few years we knew something was wrong, but we couldn't put our finger on it. And then it wasn't until she couldn't remember to take her medication. My mother had a heart condition that she's had since she was a child. She had a rheumatic fever that went undiagnosed. And if you don't get it, starts out as strep throat. And if you don't get it diagnosed, it eventually attacks your heart valves and weakens them. So she'd been taking medication since her like early 20s. To treat this heart condition, and she couldn't remember to take it. She couldn't remember to do anything, and she started carrying all her medicine with her in her bag around the house with her. And she and my father had a knockdown, drag out conversation for like, I don't know, it was like an hour-long argument where he was like, let me control your medicine to make sure that you take it. And that's when we realized something was really, really wrong.
So as a child, just Alzheimer's, when I think about it, it impacts your brain, your memory. But it's so much more.
Everything.
Your brain is shutting down your organs, and your brain is not allowing and that has to be even more horrific to watch the physical with the mental come together. So if anybody out there, wants to talk about that today, I'm here for it. 866-801-8255. And I thank you, Danielle Belton, for sharing that, because I didn't know. I know that your mom had passed. I didn't know how. So that was really special for you to share that.